She was giving birth to twins right there on the sidewalk when her ex-husband, a doctor, appeared and delivered the babies himself. Blood streamed down her legs as she screamed, clutching a torn, filthy backpack. She was alone, surrounded by honking cars, indifferent voices, and judgmental stares. Her water had broken on the bus, and no one helped her. She fell to her knees, contractions ripping through her body in waves of unbearable pain. The whole world rushed past, as it always does when misery isn't its own, until a shadow stopped. The click of expensive shoes, a cold, commanding voice slicing through the noise. Move aside. When she lifted her tear-blurred eyes, time split in half. It was him, the man she swore she'd never see again, the father who denied his children. Her ex-husband, now kneeling before her, his hands covered in blood, eyes frozen in shock. The celebrated chief surgeon, the face on magazine covers, heir to a chain of private clinics, there he was, on his knees, on a filthy New York sidewalk, trembling before the wreckage he himself had created. What happened next would change the fate of all three of them forever. The pain had started as a dull squeeze, almost unnoticeable, while Livia Villani waited in line at the public clinic. She had spent the whole morning there, sitting on a cracked plastic chair, trying to get a prenatal appointment that would never happen. The system was down. Her name had vanished from the records. The receptionist, not bothering to look up, told her to start over. Livia walked out with a pounding head and heavy body, dragging the same old backpack that carried everything she owned: 2 sets of clothes, a toothbrush, and a worn notebook filled with names she'd chosen for the babies. Gail, Serena. She whispered the names softly as she walked to the bus stop. They sounded like promises, as if by saying them aloud, she could summon a different future. The afternoon sun burned over Fifth Avenue. Heat rose from the pavement in shimmering waves. Sweat trickled down her neck, gluing her faded blouse to her swollen body. At 8.5 months pregnant with twins, every step was a battle, but she couldn't stop. She never could. The bus arrived packed, as always. Livia climbed aboard slowly, gripping the metal rail. No one offered a seat. Men in suits looked away. Women tightened their purses on their laps, pretending not to notice her enormous belly or her swollen feet squeezed into worn-out sandals. Livia stood, clinging to the pole as the bus jolted through every pothole. The pain in her belly pulsed harder. Then she felt it, a sudden warmth running down her legs. Then the wetness, the fluid spreading thick and hot, soaking through her sweatpants. Her water had broken. Her heart raced. "Help," she whispered, but her voice drowned under the rumble of the engine, the chatter, the collective indifference. "Ma'am, you're making a mess," someone behind her muttered in disgust. Livia turned. A middle-aged man stared at her with contempt. Other passengers began to notice. Faces twisted. Someone whispered, "That's disgusting." Another said, "She should be in a hospital, not here," as if she had a choice. The first real contraction hit like lightning. Livia bent forward, a muffled moan escaping her throat. Her knuckles turned white around the pole. The pain was beyond anything she'd ever known, a brutal, tearing pressure, like her body was being split open from within. "Stop the bus!" she cried, or tried to. Her voice came out hoarse, desperate. "Please, I need to get off." The driver didn't hear, or didn't care. The bus kept rolling. Each bump was torture. When she finally stumbled off, 3 stomps later, she could barely stand. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed on the sidewalk. The backpack rolled away. Livia tried to push herself up, but another contraction hit, ripping through her. Life went on around her. People passed. Some stepped aside. Others glanced down, pity mixed with disgust. Cars honked. A cyclist nearly ran over her. No one stopped. "Please, someone," she sobbed, voice cracking. Blood mixed with amniotic fluid stained the ground. She felt the babies pushing down, her body opening against her will, against mercy. She had been a nurse once. She knew exactly what was happening. She knew she was in labor, there, in the street, alone. And she knew she might die, that her babies might die. She thought of Dr. Icarus Ravelli, the man who put her there, the man who swore he loved her, seducing her with whispered promises during long night shifts, making her believe she mattered. Then, when she told him about the pregnancy, he looked at her as if she were nothing, or worse, a threat. "You're trying to trap me," he said coldly, in the hospital parking lot. "You'll destroy my career, my family. I won't let you." 2 weeks later she was fired. Inappropriate conduct, they said. Involvement with a superior, they said. No one wanted her side of the story. No one cared that he was the one who chased her, called her, made her believe in something real. Now she was there, bleeding out on the ground, her life slipping away with every drop, until she heard the footsteps, steady, decisive, the sound of expensive shoes hitting concrete. "Move, get out of the way." The voice was sharp, commanding, the voice of a man used to giving orders. Livia lifted her head. Through the haze of pain and tears, she saw a tall figure in a dark gray suit. The sunlight framed him like fire. For a second, she thought she was hallucinating, but then his face came into focus. Icarus, Dr. Icarus Ravelli, his angular jaw, honey-colored eyes wide with shock, mouth slightly open. He recognized her instantly. Livia saw it, the horror, the disbelief, maybe even a flash of guilt, but it vanished just as fast. He dropped to his knees beside her, swift, controlled. Those hands, the same hands that once touched her with desire, now trembled as they pressed against her belly. "Livia," he said, his voice breaking at the edges. How long have you been in labor?" She couldn't answer. She just stared at him, unable to comprehend the cruelty of fate that had placed him there, in that moment, on that street. "Livia." Icarus's tone snapped back into professional command. "I need you to focus. How far apart are the contractions? Tell me." But his words were nothing more than noise. All she could think was, "This is the man who destroyed me, and now he'll have to witness what he did." Dr. Icarus Ravelli didn't hesitate longer than a heartbeat. 2 decades of medical training took over. He stripped off his suit jacket in one swift motion, revealing a spotless white shirt underneath, and barked to the small crowd gathering nearby. "Someone call an ambulance, now." Phones came out, but no one stepped forward. Icarus didn't wait. He dropped to his knees beside Livia, his tailored pants pressed against the filthy concrete, instantly stained with blood and amniotic fluid. He placed a steady hand on her belly, rigid, rock-hard from an active contraction. "Livia, look at me," he said, forcing his voice to stay calm, firm. "I need to check you. I need to see how far you are." She finally met his eyes, and the air left his lungs. Those brown eyes, once alive and full of warmth, were now fogged with agony and hatred, pure, earned hatred. "Don't touch me," she managed between clenched teeth, but another contraction hit, tearing a scream from deep inside her that split from his chest. "I know," he said quickly, voice low. "I know you hate me, and you have every right to, but this isn't about me, or you, or what I did. It's about them." His hand pressed gently over her belly again, feeling 2 distinct movements. 2 babies, Livia. "They need to come out, and if you don't let me help, they'll die. You'll die." Tears streamed down her face, mixing with sweat. She nodded once, a small, broken gesture of surrender. Icarus moved fast. He removed the lower part of her clothing with as much care as the chaos allowed, draping his jacket over her to preserve a shred of dignity amid the brutal exposure. When he looked down, his heart sank, fully dilated, crowning already. He could see the head. "Jesus Christ," he muttered under his breath. Then louder to her, "Livia, the first one's coming. On the next contraction, I need you to push as hard as you can. I can't, she cried. Not here. Not like this. Yes, you can. He held her face in both hands, forcing her to focus. You're the strongest woman I've ever known. Always were. I was the coward, not you. So now, you're going to show me that strength. You're going to bring them into this world. Our children. That last word, our, hit her like an electric shock. Her eyes widened, but there was no time to react. The next contraction hit like a tidal wave, and Livia screamed, her entire body convulsing with the effort. That's it, keep going. Icarus's voice was steady now, fully in control, hands in position. Almost there, just a little more. And then, with one last, primal cry that echoed down the entire avenue, the first baby slid into Icarus's trembling hands. Tiny, bloody, perfect, a boy. For a frozen heartbeat, Icarus just stared, feeling the small, warm weight in his palms, watching the little chest rise for the very first breath. The sharp newborn cry cut through the air, and something shattered inside him. The cold armor he'd built over years of ambition and denial cracked wide open. It's a boy, he whispered, voice trembling. Livia, it's a boy. She was panting, spent, but reached out with shaking arms. Icarus laid the baby on her chest, still connected by the cord. She wrapped her trembling hands around him, sobbing uncontrollably. Gale, she whispered. My Gale. There was no time to breathe. Her body tensed again. The second one, Icarus said, repositioning himself. Livia, we have to do this again. Just one more time. I can't, she moaned. I have nothing left. Yes, you do. He gripped her hand tightly. You do. For him. He glanced at the baby on her chest. And for her, because I know it's a girl. Bring her now. Bring her into the world. Livia pushed, screamed, bled, and 6 long minutes later, another fragile cry filled the air. A girl, smaller than her brother, delicate but fierce in her first breath. Serena, Livia said, as Icarus laid the newborn beside her brother. My Serena. Icarus wrapped both babies in his ruined jacket, pressing them against their mother's chest to keep them warm. His hands were soaked in blood, his clothes destroyed. He didn't care. He was on his knees, staring at the woman he'd broken, and at the 2 miracles she'd brought into the world alone. The sirens finally pierced the air. Paramedics rushed with a stretcher. Icarus didn't move. I'm coming with her, he said, when they tried to pull him back. Sir, only family. I am the father. Icarus roared, a sound so raw it froze the paramedic mid-step. I'm their father and I'm coming. Livia looked at him, and in her gaze, he saw everything he had destroyed. Love, trust, future. But behind all that, maybe, just maybe, the faintest spark of something else. Forgiveness? No. Too soon. But maybe the door wasn't entirely closed. Let him come, she murmured, eyes drifting shut. Just this once. Inside the ambulance, as the paramedics worked, Icarus held her hand, and for the first time in over a year, she didn't pull away. Through the back window, he saw a face in the crowd. His stomach turned cold. Taina Cubas, investigative journalist, phone raised, recording everything. It was over. His career, his reputation, everything he'd built. Within 24 hours the world would know. And strangely, as he looked at Livia and the 2 babies breathing softly against her chest, Icarus realized he didn't care anymore. Livia woke in a room straight out of an interior design magazine. Soft white walls, beige linen curtains filtering sunlight, a vase of rare orchids on a pale wooden dresser. The silence was surreal. No horns, no shouting, no sirens. She blinked, disoriented, trying to remember where she was. Then the pain reminded her. A deep pull, low in her abdomen. Her hand flew to her stomach. Soft now. Empty. Panic surged up her throat. Gale, Serena. She tried to sit up, but her body refused to obey. She was too weak. They're fine. Livia turned her head sharply. Icarus was sitting in an armchair in the corner of the room, wearing a plain shirt and jeans, clothes she had never seen on him before. He looked exhausted. Stubble shadowed his jaw, dark circles under his eyes, but he was alert, like he'd been there all night. "Where are they?" Livia asked, her voice hoarse. "In the private nursery 2 floors down, monitored around the clock. They're healthy, Livia, both of them. Gail weighs about 5 pounds and 4 ounces. Serena about 4 pounds and 13 ounces. Small, but strong." He stood and walked toward her carefully, as if she were a wild animal that might attack. "The doctors wanted to keep them in the NICU for observation, but I brought in the best specialists. They're being well cared for." "Why am I here?" she asked. "What hospital is this?" "Ravelli Medical Center. Private wing." He hesitated. "My hospital." Livia closed her eyes. "Of course, because the universe loved a cruel joke. I want to see my children." "You will. But first you need to eat. Rest. You lost a lot of blood, Livia. You needed transfusions. The birth was traumatic, you think?" She let out a bitter laugh. "Imagine that, giving birth to twins in the middle of a street. Traumatic, huh?" Icarus flinched as if she'd slapped him, but he didn't look away. "I deserve that," he said quietly. "I deserve worse. But right now, it's not about what I deserve. It's about what you and they need." Before she could reply, the door opened. A nurse entered, pushing a cart with 2 transparent bassinets. Inside them, wrapped in soft, white blankets, were 2 tiny, perfect faces. Livia forgot how to breathe. "They were restless," the nurse said gently. "I think they miss their mother." Carefully, she lifted Gale first and placed him in Livia's arms. The weight was real, solid, alive. Livia looked down at her son, his tiny fists flexing, his lips puckering, his eyelids fluttering. Tears streamed silently down her face. "Hi, my love," she whispered. "Hi, my little boy. Mummy's here." Then came Serena, smaller, but radiating the same fierce presence. Livia held them both against her chest, feeling their warmth, their heartbeat, their fragile existence, and for the first time in months, she felt something beyond despair. She felt love, raw, crushing, unconditional love. When she looked up, Icarus was standing in the corner, a hand over his mouth, eyes glistening with tears he couldn't hide. "Do you want to hold them?" Livia asked, surprising even herself. Icarus stared at her, stunned. You'd let me." "It's not about what I want," she said, weary but firm. "It's about what's right. They're your children too. You helped bring them into the world. So yes, you can hold them." He approached slowly, almost dazed. The nurse helped, placing Gale in his arms first. Icarus cradled his son with a gentleness that didn't match his frame or strength. His hands, the same ones used to make precise surgical cuts, now trembled, holding something impossibly delicate. "Hey there," he murmured, voice breaking. "Hey, Gale. I'm your dad, and I'm so sorry for everything, but I promise." He swallowed hard. "I promise I'll fix this, somehow." Livia watched, and something inside her cracked. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the first hint of understanding that life was messier than she wanted to admit. Over the next few days, Livia remained at the hospital. Icarus had arranged everything: a private suite, fresh meals, comfortable clothes, everything the babies needed. He visited several times a day, always polite, always keeping his distance, but always there. One afternoon, he arrived with papers. "What's that?" Livia asked, adjusting Serena as she nursed. "Birth certificates," Icarus said, "already registered, with the names you chose, Gale Villani Ravelli and Serena Villani Ravelli. Your surname first, then mine." Livia looked at the documents, a lump rising in her throat. "Why?" "Because they're yours," he said softly. "You carried them. You suffered for them. You nearly died for them. The least I can do is honor that." "And your family?" she asked, already knowing the answer. What will your mother say? His jaw clenched. My mother doesn't control me anymore. But he was wrong. Because 3 days later, Magnolia Ravilli showed up. She entered the room like a quiet storm, tall, slender, dressed in an immaculate beige suit, her blonde hair pulled into a severe bun, blue eyes sharp as glass. She carried a designer bag and the faintest trace of expensive perfume. Livia's stomach twisted. So you're the one, Magnolia said flatly. Her gaze swept over Livia, then to the babies, with a mix of disgust and calculation. The nurse who seduced my son, mother. Icarus appeared at the doorway, voice like steel. Get out, not until I speak to her. Magnolia turned back to Livia, ignoring him completely. How much do you want? Excuse me, money. How much to disappear? To take those children and never come back? 1 million. 2? Name your price. Rage flooded Livia's body, sharp and burning. No, she said, each word like a blade. I don't want your money, and I'm not disappearing. They're my children, and if your son wants to be in their lives, he'll have to deal with me. Because I'm not going anywhere. Magnolia's eyes narrowed. You have no idea who you're dealing with, dear, and you don't either. Livia adjusted Serena in her arms, lifting her chin. Because I've already lost everything. My job, my home, my dignity. You can't take anything else from me. But she looked at the babies. They gave me everything back. So you can leave, and take your threats and your money with you. For a moment, genuine surprise flickered across Magnolia's face. Then it hardened again into cold stone. You'll regret this, mother. Leave. Icarus grabbed her arm and forced her toward the door. When the door finally shut, Livia started shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline, from something that felt almost like victory. But deep down, a voice whispered, "This isn't over." Icarus returned an hour later. Livia was nursing Gale, with Serena asleep in a bassinet beside her. He stood in the doorway, his face carved with something heavier than anger, something that looked like guilt, or maybe surrender. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, closing the door behind him. "My mother had no right to come here, and you don't have to apologize for her." Livia cut him off. "You're not responsible for her choices, but I am responsible for mine." Icarus pulled out a chair and sat down, running both hands over his face. "And I owe you an explanation for why I acted the way I did. When you told me about the pregnancy," Livia said nothing. She just waited, Gale nursing quietly in her arms. Icarus took a deep breath. "I had a brother," he began, his voice low, "younger than me, 3 years apart. His name was Benjamin." The past tense didn't go unnoticed. Benjamin was everything I wasn't. Spontaneous, creative, free. My father hated him for it. Said he was weak. Said he didn't have the discipline to be a Ravilli. Benjamin wanted to be an artist, a painter. My father wanted him to be a lawyer, or at least take over the family business. The pressure was unbearable. He stopped, eyes fixed on the floor. When Benjamin was 19, he met a girl. She got pregnant, and he panicked. Not because he didn't love her, he did, but because he knew what my father would do, what my mother would say, the whole family. So he kept it a secret, tried to handle it alone. He looked for underground clinics, borrowed money, got into debt. A chill ran through Livia's body. One night, about 3 months later, he went to meet her. They said she was bleeding. She'd tried to end it herself. He took my car, drove like hell, lost control, and hit a pole. He died instantly. Silence settled heavy between them. The girl lost the baby 2 days later, and vanished. We never heard from her again. Icarus finally looked up, and Livia saw a pain so old, so deep, it seemed carved into him. I was 22, already in med school, and, at the funeral, my father looked at me and said, "Now you're the only heir. Don't disappoint me like your brother did." Livia felt her eyes burn. From that day on, Icarus continued, I built armor, became the perfect surgeon, the perfect son, Cold, focused, untouchable. Never got close to anyone. Never let anyone close enough to hurt me. It was safer that way. He looked at her then, and for the first time, Livia saw something she'd never seen before in his honey-colored eyes. Vulnerability. Until you, he said softly, until you showed up on that night shift with that tired smile and those kind eyes, and made everything fall apart. I fell for you, Livia. Fast, hard, terrifyingly hard. And when you told me you were pregnant, he faltered, voice trembling. I panicked, because all I could see was Benjamin, my brother dead, the girl bleeding, the baby gone, my family tearing another life apart. So I ran. I did exactly what my father would have done. I denied it, pushed you away, convinced myself I was protecting you. Protecting me? Livia's voice cracked, disbelief and fury mixing. Icarus, you left me alone, you cost me my job. I spent months on the streets in shelters, starving. I know. He stood, walking to the window. And there's no excuse for it. No forgiveness. I should have been brave. I should have stood up to them. But I became exactly what my father raised me to be, a coward. Livia looked down at Gail, then at Serena sleeping nearby. She thought of every cold night, every skipped meal, every moment she almost gave up. But she also thought of the man who had knelt on a filthy sidewalk, covered in blood, holding their babies with shaking hands and eyes full of regret. When were you going to sign the contract? She asked suddenly. The one your mother mentioned? What was it? Icarus froze. Slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He handed it to her wordlessly. Livia opened it with one hand, keeping Gail's secure with the other. Her stomach twisted as she read. It was a non-disclosure agreement, a clause forbidding her from publicly naming Icarus as the father, from demanding child support, from making any legal claim. In exchange, she'd receive $200,000, but the paper was torn, ripped into pieces and taped back together, only so she could read it. I signed it, Icarus said quietly. 3 months ago. My mother pushed me, told me you were trying to extort me, that you wanted to ruin my career. And I believed her, because it was easier to believe that than admit I'd abandoned you, that I was the monster in the story. He met her eyes. But when I saw you on that sidewalk, bleeding, alone, bringing my children into the world without anyone, something broke inside me, Livia, something my family spent 20 years building, and I realized I could choose. I could keep being the obedient son, the flawless surgeon, the man without a heart. Or I could be what Benjamin never got to be, a father, a real man. Tears slid down his face, freely now. I tore up the contract the night of the birth, right in front of my mother, told her that if she ever tried to hurt you again, I'd tell the world what she did to Benjamin, how she crushed him until he couldn't live anymore. She'd never come near you again. Livia felt something shift inside her. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was understanding, and maybe, just maybe, the start of compassion. I'm not going to forgive you just because you cried, she said firmly, and I'm not going to pretend everything's fine just because you had a tragic past. Everyone has trauma. The difference is what we do with it. I know, but Livia took a deep breath. I believe you're sorry, and I see that you're trying. So I'll give you one chance. One, to prove you can be the father Gail and Serena deserve. Not for what you did to me, but for what you can do for them. Icarus closed his eyes, as if her words were water on a desert. Thank you, he whispered. Don't thank me yet, Livia warned. Because if you ever let them down, Icarus, I swear I'll destroy you. I don't care how much money you have, or who your family is. I'll fight for those babies with everything I've got. And Icarus, looking at the woman he had almost destroyed, who had survived the hell he created, who held their children with a strength that came from somewhere beyond, flesh and bone, believed her completely. I won't fail them, he said quietly. Never again. And for the first time, Livia thought that maybe, just maybe, he meant it. 2 weeks later, Livia was discharged from the hospital. The twins were healthy enough to go home, and she was recovering well physically. Emotionally, though, she was adrift. She had nowhere to go. The shelter she'd stayed at before didn't take in mothers with newborns, and she didn't have a single dollar to her name. That's when Icarus walked into the room with a proposal. "I bought an apartment," he said bluntly. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, in Brooklyn Heights. Safe neighborhood, close to hospitals and markets. It's fully furnished, ready for you to move in. Livia, changing Serena's diaper, froze. "You bought an apartment?" "Yes, for me, for all 3 of you, you and the kids." Livia turned back to Serena, fastening the diaper before answering. "And what's the catch?" "There's no catch. Icarus, rich people don't just give away apartments, especially not to women they tried to silence 3 months ago. So tell me, what do you want in return?" He sighed, pulling up a chair. "I want to be there. I want to be a father, a real one, not a weekend visitor, not a name on a birth certificate. I want to wake up at night when they cry, change diapers, give baths, see their first steps, hear their first words. You can do all that without giving me an apartment." "I could. But you can't do all that without having a home." He leaned forward. "Livia, I know you're proud. I know you want to do this on your own. But accepting help isn't weakness. Your kids deserve a safe roof, food on the table, clean clothes. Let me give them that. Let me start making things right." Livia wanted to say no. Every cell in her body screamed it, not to owe him, not to depend on him. But then she looked at Gail, sleeping in the crib, at Serena in her arms, and thought about the cold nights they'd face if she let pride speak louder than reason. "Fine," she said finally. "I'll take the apartment. But on my terms." "What terms?" "First, the apartment goes in my name. I don't want you taking it back if we fight. Second, you don't get a key. You don't just show up. You call, you ask, you respect that it's our space. Third, you pay child support, a fair amount, legally set, non-negotiable." Icarus nodded. "Agreed, but I have one condition too." "What's that?" "You go back to school." Livia blinked. "What? You were a nurse. A damn good one. I remember your patient charts, the way you cared for people. You loved it, and my family took that from you. So I want you to finish. Get your degree in nursing, or med school if that's what you want. I'll pay for everything. Tuition, books, daycare for the twins while you study. Whatever it takes." Tears burned her eyes. That dream had died so long ago, it hurt to even think about it. "Why would you do that?" "Because you deserve it," Icarus said simply. "And because I want my kids to see their mothers strong, independent, unstoppable. I want them to grow up knowing that no matter what happens, she can achieve anything." Livia stared at him for a long moment, searching for the lie, the hidden angle, and found none. "All right," she said, voice thick. "I'll agree. To everything. Yours and mine." Icarus smiled, a genuine smile that softened his entire face. "Then we have a deal." He held out his hand. Livia hesitated, then slowly shook it. The touch was electric. Both felt it, that spark that had never fully died, no matter how much pain or anger had buried it. Livia pulled her hand back quickly. "This doesn't mean we're back together," she said, more to herself than to him. "I know, and it doesn't mean I forgive you. I know that too. So what are we then? Parents? Partners?" Icarus thought for a moment. "How about friends? Or at least 2 people trying to be, for their sake." Livia glanced at the babies. "Fine, friends." But both knew it was far more complicated than that. A week later, Livia moved into the apartment. It was beautiful. Light hardwood floors, wide windows that filled the space with sunlight. A bedroom for her, and separate rooms for each baby, painted in soft shades of green and yellow. The kitchen was modern, the living room open and airy. There was even a small balcony with plants. Livia cried when she stepped inside, out of relief, gratitude, and the fear that it might all be taken away. That evening, Icarus arrived with groceries. He stocked the fridge, filled the pantry, brought enough diapers for a month. Then, at the door, he hesitated. "Can I visit them tomorrow?" he asked. "You can. 10 in the morning." He nodded and left, keeping his promise to respect her space. That night, Livia lay in her new bed, Gail and Serena asleep beside her, and for the first time in almost a year, she felt safe. But outside, without her knowing, Taina Kubas published a headline that would explode online. Elite surgeon abandons pregnant nurse, twins born on city street as father watches. The video of the sidewalk birth went viral. Within 12 hours, it had 5 million views. The comments were brutal, some defending Icarus for helping in the delivery, others crucifying him for abandoning her in the first place. Public opinion was split, but one thing was certain: their lives would never be private again, and the real battle was just beginning. 3 months passed, months of sleepless nights, endless bottles, and exhaustion so deep Livia sometimes forgot her own name. But they were also months of growth. Gail and Serena were bigger now, stronger, smiling when they saw her face, and Livia was rediscovering herself. Icarus kept his word. He visited every day, always on time, always respectful. He changed diapers, rocked the twins to sleep, sang terribly off-key lullabies that made Livia laugh despite herself. Slowly, the tension between them softened, replaced by something steadier, not quite friendship, but a kind of working peace. Then came the college enrollment. Livia had chosen to continue nursing, specializing in neonatology. She wanted to work with premature babies, with vulnerable mothers, to give other women the dignity she'd been denied. Her first class was on a Monday. On Sunday, Icarus showed up with a surprise. "Come on," he said at the door. "I want to take you somewhere." "Icarus, I can't just leave the babies." "I hired a nanny," Icarus said, "professional, with excellent references. She'll stay for the next 3 hours. You deserve an afternoon to yourself." Livia hesitated. He was right. She hadn't left the apartment in 3 months, except for doctor appointments. "Fine," she said, "but where are we going?" Icarus smiled mysteriously. "You'll see." He took her to a beauty salon, but not just any salon. It was one of the most exclusive in Manhattan, the kind frequented by celebrities and socialites who spent small fortunes on self-care. "Icarus, this is too much," Livia protested as they stepped inside. "It's not. You start a new chapter tomorrow. You deserve to feel incredible. Let them take care of you." And so they did. For the next 3 hours, Livia was pampered from head to toe. Massages, facials, hair treatments. They trimmed her ends, revived her dry hair, polished her nails, did her makeup. When it was all over, the woman staring back at her in the mirror barely looked like the one who had walked in. Her hair, once lifeless, now fell in soft waves around her shoulders, cut in a modern style that framed her face. Her makeup was subtle, yet striking, emphasizing her brown eyes, her cheekbones, her lips. She looked radiant, strong, alive. When she stepped outside, Icarus was leaning against the car, waiting. The moment he saw her, he froze. "Livia," he said, voice rough. You look incredible." She blushed. "It's just makeup." "No, it's not. You've always been beautiful. But now you're shining." He opened the car door for her, but before she got in, he lightly touched her arm. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For letting me be part of this. Watching you come back to life. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Livia looked at him, and for the first time, she really saw him. Not the man who had abandoned her. Not the coward who ran. But the man who knelt on a dirty sidewalk, who held their children with shaking hands and tear-filled eyes. The man who was trying, day by day, to be better. "You're welcome," she whispered. The ride back was quiet, but not awkward. It was the kind of silence that happens between two people beginning to understand each other again. The next day, Livia went to college. She wore the new clothes Icarus had insisted on buying, nothing extravagant, but elegant and comfortable. She felt secure in them, like a gentle kind of armor. But the moment she entered the classroom, every eye turned toward her. They knew who she was. The video had gone viral. Everyone in America had seen the footage of her giving birth on the sidewalk, with Dr. Icarus Ravelli kneeling beside her. Everyone had an opinion. That's her, the woman from the video. I heard she set the whole thing up to get his money. No, I heard he abandoned her. What a monster. Livia felt her face burn. She wanted to run, to disappear, but then she thought of Gail and Serena, thought of everything she'd survive, and she lifted her chin. She sat in the back and opened her notebook. Class began, and slowly, the noise in her head faded. The lecture was on neonatal anatomy, premature care, neonatal response. She was hooked instantly, scribbling notes, absorbing everything like a sponge. When class ended, a girl approached her. Young curly hair tied up in a bun, shy smile. "Hey," she said softly, "I'm Julia. I just wanted to say, I saw the video, and I think you're amazing. What you went through, and you're still here, still fighting. That's real strength." Livia's throat tightened. "Thank you. If you ever want company, or need help with classes, I'm around. I'd like that." And just like that, Livia made her first friend in a long time. That evening, Icarus came by to see the kids. Livia told him about her day, the whispers, the stares. "Julia, I knew you'd crush it," he said, rocking Gail, who was fighting sleep. "You had more faith than I did." "I always did." He smiled. "You know, I was thinking, there's a charity gala at the hospital next week. Dinner, auction, the usual. I know it's a lot of exposure, but would you come with me?" Livia blinked. "As your date, as my partner, the mother of my children, the strongest woman I know." He hesitated. "I want the world to see you the way I do now. Not as the woman from the video, but as the warrior you are." Livia didn't answer right away. It was a big step, public, risky, but it was also a chance to reclaim her story, to show she wasn't just the woman who gave birth on a street. She was more, much more. "All right," she said finally. "I'll go." Icarus's smile lit up the room, and in that moment something shifted between them, something irreversible. The door Livia had kept tightly shut creaked open, just a crack, but enough for light to slip through. The dress Icarus chose for her was flawless, emerald green, elegantly tailored to embrace her post-pregnancy curves with dignity, not exposure. The fabric was soft, luxurious, falling to her ankles with a discreet slit at the side. When she looked in the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. Her hair was styled into a sleek, low bun, a few loose strands framing her face. Her makeup was impeccable, defined eyes, nude lips, luminous skin. She looked powerful. When she descended the stairs to meet Icarus, he went speechless, literally froze mid-step, eyes trailing over her with an intensity that made the air between them thrum. "You look perfect," he finally managed. Icarus too looked immaculate, a tailored black tuxedo, crisp white shirt, bow tie, hair slicked back, beard neatly trimmed. He looked like he'd stepped off a magazine cover. But it was the way he looked at her, as if she were the only person in the universe, that made Livia's heart race. "You don't look too bad yourself," she said, trying to sound casual. He offered his arm, ready to face the lions. She took a deep breath. Ready. The event was held at Trevally Medical Center, in the grand ballroom on the 10th floor. When they arrived, the place was packed with top doctors, CEOs, and Manhattan elites, all in designer gowns and tailored suits, sipping champagne, chatting in tight little circles. The moment Livia and Icarus walked in together, The room went silent. It was as if someone had hit pause. Every eye turned toward them, some wide with shock, some curious, others dripping with judgment. Livia's instinct was to retreat, but then she felt Icarus's hand on her back, firm, steady, grounding. "Breathe," he whispered. "You belong here as much as any of them, maybe more." They walked together to the bar. Icarus ordered sparkling water for her and whiskey for himself, and as they waited, the whispers began. "That's her, the nurse, the nerve she has, showing up here. Look at her dress, obviously bought with his money." Livia gripped her champagne flute tightly, but kept her face composed. She'd rehearsed for this. He knew it would happen, but hearing it for real still hit different. "Livia Villani." The voice came from behind, sweet but laced with venom. Livia turned, and her stomach dropped. Clarissa Boyd, a former co-worker from the hospital, one of the many who hadn't lifted a finger when Livia was fired. In fact, one of the ones who helped spread the rumors that justified it. "Clarissa," Livia said evenly. "Well, look who it is. What a surprise seeing you here. And so, well-dressed." Clarissa's eyes scanned Livia's emerald gown with barely concealed envy. "Must be nice having a rich benefactor, huh?" Before Livia could reply, Icarus stepped between them. "Good evening, Clarissa," he said, his tone sharp as ice. "You might want to choose your next words carefully." Clarissa flinched, but kept her fake smile. "I was just greeting an old colleague, Dr. Reveille. No harm intended." "Good. Then you can go back to wherever you came from." Clarissa turned on her heels, tossing one last, poisonous glance at Livia before walking away. "You didn't have to do that," Livia murmured. "I can handle her." "I know you can," he said softly, "but you don't have to anymore. Not alone." Dinner began. They were seated at a central table, a deliberate move by Icarus. He wasn't hiding her, he was making a statement. She belonged there. Throughout the evening, he introduced her to colleagues, hospital board members, and donors. Some were polite, others cold, but every time someone crossed the line, with a smirk, a whisper, a dismissive tone, Icarus shut it down instantly. Then midway through dessert, it happened. Magnolia Ravelli entered the ballroom. Livia recognized her instantly. Tall, elegant, dressed in a black lace designer suit that probably cost more than a car, diamonds glittering subtly at her neck and wrists. Magnolia walked straight to their table. "Icarus," she said, ignoring Livia completely. "We need to talk, privately." "Whatever you have to say, you can say it here," he replied, staying seated. "Don't be childish. This is about family, about the hospital, about your future." "My future's right here." He placed his hand over Livia's, a deliberate, public gesture. "And if you want to be part of it, you'll have to accept that." Magnolia finally turned to Livia. Her icy blue eyes were cutting. "Do you honestly believe you belong here?" she asked, voice sharp as glass. "Look around, dear. Everyone in this room comes from legacy families, Ivy League schools, real pedigree. And you're famous for giving birth on a sidewalk. That's not a title, it's a disgrace." The room went silent. Every eye in the ballroom was on them, waiting for Livia's reaction. She could have crumbled, she could have cried, she could have walked away. But instead, she rose from her chair, met Magnolia's stare head-on and said, "You're right. I didn't come from a legacy family. I didn't go to an Ivy League. And yes, I gave birth on a sidewalk, alone, while your son, the man you raised, stood there in shock because he was too busy being a coward to take responsibility." She took a breath. "But you know what else I did? I survived. I protected my children. I went back to school. I'm rebuilding my life, without stepping on anyone, without buying silence, without destroying people to do it. So maybe I don't belong in your world. And I thank God for that, because your world turned your son into a man who denied his own children. And mine, the one you look down on, turned those children into 2 loved, safe, happy babies. Silence. Not a single sound. "Now, if you'll excuse me," Livia said, picking up her clutch, "I'm going home. To my kids, where I should have been all along." She turned to Icarus. "Thank you for the invitation, but I think I've made my point." Then she walked toward the exit, head high, spine straight, every step a declaration. She was nearly at the door when she heard footsteps behind her. "Icarus," he caught up, grabbed her hand. "Wait," he said, breathless, then turned toward the entire room, raising his voice. "You all want the truth. Here it is. I abandoned this woman. I left her alone and pregnant because I was a coward, because my family taught me that reputation mattered more than integrity, and because of that, she nearly died. My children nearly died, but she fought. She survived. She's 10 times stronger, braver, and more honorable than anyone in this room, including me." He looked at Livia, ignoring the cell phones now recording every second. "And if you can't see that, that's your problem, not hers." Then, right there, in front of everyone, Icarus cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. It wasn't polite. It wasn't careful. It was raw, desperate, full of months of regret, longing, and love he could no longer hide. Livia froze for a heartbeat, then melted into him. Her fingers gripped his tuxedo lapel, her entire body surrendering to the moment. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "Let's go home," Icarus whispered. "To our kids, together." Livia's eyes filled with tears. She nodded. Together, they walked out, hand in hand, leaving behind a sea of stunned faces, flashing cameras, and Magnolia Ravelli standing motionless in the center of the ballroom, her expression somewhere between fury and reluctant respect. In the car, silence lingered for a while. The weight of what had just happened hung thick between them. Icarus drove with one hand, the other intertwined with hers. "You were incredible back there," he said finally. "I just told the truth. Most people wouldn't have had the courage. Not in front of that crowd." Livia looked out the window, watching the city lights streak by. "I'm done being afraid, Icarus. Done feeling small. Those people, they gossip, they judge, they tear lives apart over dinner, but at the end of the night, they go home to empty houses and fake lives built on appearances. I'll take my life over theirs any day, pain and all, because at least mine is real." He squeezed her hand. "I'd take your life too, and if you'll let me, I want to be part of it for real. Not as the dad who visits, but as someone who stays." Livia turned to him, heart pounding. "What are you saying?" He stopped at a red light and looked at her, his honey-colored eyes burning in the dim glow of the dashboard. "I'm saying I love you, that I never stopped, and that every single day since I walked away has been hell. I'm not asking you to forgive me now, or even to love me back. I'm just asking for a chance, to prove I can be the man you and our kids deserve." Livia felt her eyes sting. "Icarus, you don't have to say anything," he cut in quickly. "Just think about it, please." She nodded, speechless. When they arrived at the apartment, the nanny informed them that Gail and Serena had slept peacefully through the night. Icarus paid her generously and sent her home. Then he lingered by the door, hesitant. "I should probably go," he said. "Or you could stay," Livia heard herself say, "just to watch them sleep. Nothing else." His eyes softened. "I'd love that." Together, they walked into the nursery. Gail and Serena slept deeply, their tiny chests rising and falling in perfect rhythm. Icarus stood by the cribs, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the nightlight, pure awe in his eyes. "They've grown so much," he whispered. "They do that fast. I keep thinking about everything I almost missed. Every smile, every milestone, every moment, all because of fear, because I was a coward." Livia touched his arm gently. "But you didn't miss it. You're here now. That's what matters." Icarus looked at her then, and what she saw in his gaze took her breath away. Pure adoration, reverence, a kind of love she'd never seen in anyone before, not even when they'd first fallen for each other. "Livia," he said, voice rough, "I know it's too soon. I know you're still healing, but I need you to know. I'll wait, as long as it takes. I'll prove every single day that I've changed, that I'm worthy of you." She didn't plan what happened next. It just did. Livia leaned in and kissed him, soft, almost hesitant. A kiss different from the one at the gala, private, intimate, full of quiet possibility. When she pulled away, Icarus was trembling. "Stay," she whispered. "Tonight. On the couch. I don't want you to leave." "I'll stay," he promised. "I'll always stay, if you let me." And that night, with their children sleeping peacefully nearby, Livia and Icarus talked until dawn, about everything. The mistakes, the guilt, the dreams, the fears. And slowly, painfully, they began rebuilding what had been broken. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be fast. But for the first time they both believed it was possible. In the weeks that followed, something fundamental shifted between them. Icarus began spending more time at the apartment, not just visiting, but living. He cooked dinner, bathed the babies, folded laundry, watched Netflix with Livia after the twins were asleep. It was domestic, ordinary, beautifully imperfect. One evening, Livia was studying for a tough neonatal physiology exam. Her books were spread across the table, notes everywhere, her head pounding from all the information. Icarus appeared with a steaming cup of tea. "Thought you might need this," he said, setting it beside her. "Thank you." She took a sip, the warmth soothing instantly. "How did you know I like chamomile tea?" "I remember. You always ordered it during night shifts at the hospital." She blinked. "You remember that?" "I remember everything about you, Livia. The way you tie your hair when you're focused. The way you bite your lip when you're nervous. The way your eyes light up when you really laugh. I kept every detail, because even when I was pretending you didn't matter, you were all I could think about." Her pulse quickened. "Icarus." He knelt beside her, taking her hand. "I know we're still rebuilding. I know you don't fully trust me yet, and that's okay. But I need you to know, you're not just the mother of my kids. You're the woman I choose, every day, in every way." Tears welled in her eyes. "I'm scared," she confessed. "Scared to believe again. Scared to get hurt. I'm scared too. Terrified, actually. Because if I screw this up again, there won't be a third chance. And I couldn't survive losing you twice." He brushed his thumb across her cheek. "But fear can't stop us from living. Benicio taught me that. He was afraid, and it killed him. I won't make the same mistake, not with you, not with them." Livia placed her hand over his. "I choose you too," she whispered. "It scares me, but I choose you." The kiss that followed felt inevitable, slow, deep, and filled with all the time they had lost. His hands slid into her hair as hers gripped his shirt, the open book falling from the table, forgotten. They broke apart breathless, foreheads resting together. "I love you," Icarus murmured. "I never stopped, not for a second." "I love you too," Livia said, and saying it out loud felt like freedom. "Even when I hated you, I still loved you. That was the hardest part. I'm sorry for all of it. Every tear, every lonely night, every ounce of pain. If I could go back, you can't, and that's okay. Maybe we needed to fall apart to learn how to rebuild the right way." Icarus pulled her into his lap, and she went willingly. They sat like that for a long time, holding each other, their hearts sinking in quiet rhythm. "Stay with me," Livia said softly, "for real this time. Move in. Let's raise our kids together. Not as two strangers sharing custody, but as a family. Are you sure?" "Completely." He kissed her again, a kiss that didn't just promise love, but a future. And that night, for the first time, he slept beside her, holding her until morning. But not everything was romance and second chances. Taina Cuba's story had cracked open a Pandora's box. Other journalists started digging, and soon they found it, the story of Benicio. The headline hit, On a Tuesday morning, the Ravely tragedy. Famed surgeon's brother dies after family rejects pregnancy. History repeats, decades later. The article laid everything bare. Benicio's girlfriend, the hidden pregnancy, the crash, the lost baby. And it drew brutal parallels to what had happened with Livia. Icarus went pale reading it. How did they find this out? He whispered. Livia squeezed his hand. Someone leaked it. Probably someone from the hospital who knew. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Calls from reporters, colleagues, even patients. But the worst one came from Magnolia herself. You, she hissed when he answered. You gave them this story. To destroy me. I didn't give anyone anything, Mother. And you know that. The truth always finds a way out eventually. Benicio died because of his own choices. Not mine. Benicio is dead because you made him feel like there was no other way, Icarus shouted, finally losing control. You pressured him, shamed him, made him believe love was weakness, and he'd rather die than live in the world you built. So no, Mother, I don't blame you for his death directly, but I do blame you for creating the prison that made him feel trapped. Silence on the other end. I almost did the same thing, Icarus continued, his tone softening. I almost destroyed Livia and our children because I was living by your rules. But that ends now. I choose them. I choose love. I choose to be human instead of perfect. And if that means losing the Ravelli name, the hospital, the inheritance, so be it. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. And for the first time in my life, I'm at peace with it. Goodbye, Mother. He hung up, and then, trembling, he fell into Livia's arms. I did it, he said, half laughing, half crying. I actually did it. I'm proud of you. I might lose everything, but you already have everything. Livia held his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. You have 2 beautiful children. You have a brilliant career built on your talent, not your family's name. And you have me. If you still want me, I'll always want you. Until my last breath. They kissed. A vow sealed not with words, but with certainty. Whatever came next, they would face it together. But the story didn't end there. 2 days later, Livia received an unexpected call. Hello, Livia Valeni. The voice was female, hesitant. My name is Diana Cole. I was Benicio Ravelli's girlfriend. Livia nearly dropped the phone. Diana, I saw the news. The story coming back up. And I need to talk. I need to tell someone what really happened. Will you meet me? Livia looked at Icarus, sitting on the couch, with Gale, asleep on his chest. She covered the phone. It's Diana, Benicio's girlfriend. She wants to meet. Icarus's eyes widened. After 20 years. After 20 years, he nodded slowly. Set it up. We need to hear what she has to say. And in that moment, Livia knew they were about to uncover something that would change everything. Again. Diana Cole met them at a quiet cafe in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, far from curious eyes or cameras. She was in her early 40s now, but the woman Benicio had loved was still visible beneath the years' deep brown eyes, dark hair streaked with silver, and a sorrow that lived permanently in the corners of her mouth. When she saw Icarus, she burst into tears. "You look so much like him," she said, voice shaking. "The same eyes. The same way you tilt your head when you're thinking." Icarus sat down, Livia beside him, and gently took Diana's hand across the table. "Diana," he said softly, "thank you for coming. I know this can't be easy." Easy isn't the word. She wiped her tears. "I spent 20 years trying to forget. I moved away, almost changed my name, built a new life. But when I saw the reports, the same story repeating itself, I knew I had to speak. What really happened that night?" Icarus asked. "The truth, please." Diana took a shaky breath. "Benicio wasn't coming to see me because I'd tried to get an abortion. That's the story your family spread. The truth is, I was being threatened." "Threatened?" Livia asked. "By people your mother hired. Diana's gaze locked onto Icarus. Magnolia found out about the pregnancy. I don't know how, but she did. She came to me, said that if I didn't disappear, if I didn't break up with Benicio and vanish, she'll destroy my family. My father owned a small auto repair shop. She threatened to have him accused of fraud, money laundering, things that could have put him in prison. Icarus went pale. I was young, terrified, so I agreed. I broke up with Benicio without explaining, but he wouldn't accept it. He kept looking for me, begging to know what had changed, and that night, she closed her eyes. That night, he found out I was pregnant. I don't know how, but he was coming to get me, not because I was in medical danger, but because he was going to take me away, run off with me, start a life with our baby, far from his family. But he crashed, Livia said softly, because he was being followed. Diana opened her eyes, now burning with old fury. There was another car. Witnesses saw it. A black car with no plates, trailing him all night. It forced him off the road. Then it disappeared. You're saying my mother? Icarus couldn't finish. I'm saying she'd do anything to protect the Reveille name. I don't have proof, but I know it in my heart. And when I lost the baby 2 days later, from shock, from grief, part of me died too. Tears streamed down Icarus's face. I'm so sorry, he whispered, for everything you went through, for what my family did to you. It's not your fault. But when I saw your story, Livia, you being abandoned, humiliated, almost dying, and then saw Icarus wake up, fight for you, choose you, I knew this time the story needed a different ending. Diana slid an envelope across the table. These are all the pieces I managed to keep. Photos, letters, records of the threats. It's not much, but it's enough to show your family's pattern. If you want to use it to protect yourselves, you have my blessing. Icarus stared at the envelope like it might explode, because in a way it could. The truth inside could destroy Magnolia Reveille publicly. It could clear Benicio's name, but it could also blow up everything that was left of the family. We need to think, Livia said, always the voice of reason. Something like this has consequences. I know. That's why the choice is yours. Diana stood. But please, remember this. Benicio loved art. He dreamed of opening a school for underprivileged kids to learn painting. It was all he ever talked about. If you decide to make this public, I just ask one thing. Use whatever money or attention it brings to build that school. In his name. So something good can come from all this pain. She looked at Icarus one last time. You're just like him. But you're also different. You're brave in a way he never got the chance to be. Stay that way. For him, for you, for your children. And then she left, leaving behind an envelope that could change everything. That night, Livia and Icarus stayed awake for hours, the envelope lying between them on the bed, still unopened. What do you want to do? Livia asked quietly. I don't know, part of me wants to expose everything. Get justice for Benicio, for Diana, for you. But the other part is afraid of what it'll unleash. Not for me, for Gail and Serena. They're going to grow up with this story hanging over them, the scandal, the accusations. It could follow them forever. Livia took a long breath. Or it could teach them that doing what's right, even when it's hard, is always worth it. That we don't run from the truth, we face it. Icarus looked at her, awestruck. How are you this wise? I'm not. I'm just someone who learned the hard way that buried truths rot. They spread like infection. Sometimes the only way to heal is to open the wound, let it bleed. So we do it. We tell everything. We do, but not alone. We talk to a journalist we trust. And we use this to build the school Benicio dreamed of, turn tragedy into legacy. He kissed her, slow, grateful. I don't deserve you. It's not about deserving. It's about choosing. Every day. 1 week later, they gave an exclusive interview to Tanya Cruz. This time, not to fuel gossip, but to honor truth. The article revealed everything. Benicio's story, the threats, the toxic pattern behind the Reveille name. But it also told of redemption, of Icarus choosing differently, of Livia surviving, of love pushing through the cracks of power and shame. The public response was immediate. Magnolia was forced to resign from the hospital board. Official investigations began. But something else happened too. Donations started pouring in from all across the country to support the Benicio Ravelli Art Institute, the school Livia and Icarus created in his memory. 2 months later, on a quiet Saturday morning, Icarus called Livia into the living room. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, visibly nervous. "What is it?" "I got an offer from a hospital in Boston. They want me to join their neonatal surgery research program. It's an incredible opportunity. 2 years, with potential extension." Livia's heart sank. Boston, yeah. The US, far from here, far from you and the kids. "So, are you going?" "I was thinking." He got down on one knee, holding her hands. "What if you came with me?" Livia blinked, stunned. "Finish your undergrad here, then do your master's there. Boston has some of the best nursing programs in the world. We go together, all 4 of us. As a family." Tears welled up. "Icarus, this is a lot. No. And if you say no, I'm not going. No guilt, no pressure. You 3 are everything to me. Always." She thought of all they'd been through, how far they'd come. Then she thought about what could be. Gail and Serena learning English, playing in American parks, chasing dreams she never thought possible. "Yes," she said. "Let's go." His smile lit up the room. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her like it was both the first and the last time. "We're going to do this right," he promised. "A real family, in every way." And in that moment, Livia knew they were ready for the next chapter, for the world, for forever. 3 years later, the Grand Hall of the New York Medical Foundation was packed for the annual awards gala. Doctors, researchers, and scholars from across the country had gathered to celebrate innovation in healthcare. The lighting was soft, elegant. A piano played quietly in the background. Everything breathed prestige. Icarus Ravel sat at one of the front tables, dressed in a flawless tux, joined by colleagues who'd flown in from Boston to watch him receive the award for excellence in neonatal surgery for his groundbreaking work in in utero procedures. But he couldn't focus on the speeches. His eyes kept drifting to the entrance. She had promised she'd come. "Nervous?" asked Dr. Nathaniel Matthews, his American mentor. "Just a bit," Icarus said. "She be here. Relax." But how could he? It had been 3 months since he'd seen Livia. 3 months since she'd returned to Brazil to defend her master's thesis in neonatal nursing, leaving him and the twins temporarily in Boston. 3 months that felt like forever. They talked daily on video calls. Gail and Serena, now 3.5, asked for their mum constantly. And Icarus, he missed her like air. The MC took the stage, announcing the next honoree. Icarus tried to listen, but then he felt it, a shift in the room, a hush, heads turning, and then he saw her. Livia Villani walked in, and the world stilled. She was breathtaking, changed but undeniably herself, wearing a deep navy dress that hugged her body with quiet confidence, her hair in soft waves, makeup accentuating the fire in her dark eyes. But it wasn't her looks that stole the room, it was her presence, her strength, the aura of a woman who had been to hell and returned burning brighter. Icarus stood without thinking. She walked toward him, smiling that same smile that still undid him. When she reached him, he pulled her into his arms, not caring who was watching. "You came," he whispered into her hair. "I always do," she said. "Sorry I'm late. The flight got delayed. Doesn't matter. You're here." He pulled back just enough to look at her, to memorize her. "I love you so much," he said. "I love you too. Always." A discreet cough reminded them where they were. Livia blushed. Icarus introduced her to his colleagues, who greeted her with warmth and awe. They'd heard the story, the whole world had, but seeing her in person was something else entirely. Then the MC called Icarus's name. He took the stage, accepted the award, and stepped to the mic. "Thank you," he began. "This honor means a lot, but I have to be honest. No achievement in my career compares to what I've been blessed with in my personal life." He looked directly at Livia. "4 years ago I was a skilled surgeon, but a terrible man. I walked away from the woman I loved when she needed me most. I left her alone, pregnant, fighting for survival, and because of my cowardice, she almost died. My children almost died." The room fell silent, but she made it. And not just made it, she rose. Livia Villani graduated nursing school with top honors. She completed a master's in neonatology at one of the top programs in the US. Her thesis on care for vulnerable mothers is shifting hospital policies. She's also the co-founder of the Benicio Ravelli Institute, which has provided free art education to more than 500 underprivileged children. Icarus stepped down from the stage, walking straight toward Livia as his voice continued to carry through the hall. "But beyond every professional award, every published paper, every breakthrough, she's the most incredible mother to our children. She's my partner in everything, and she's the strongest, most courageous, most extraordinary person I've ever met." He stopped in front of her and, to everyone's surprise, knelt down. Livia gasped, covering her mouth as Icarus pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "Livia," he said, voice thick with emotion, "4 years ago, I found you on a sidewalk giving birth to our children in a moment that should have broken us, but instead, it rebuilt us. Every day with you since has been a gift I know I don't deserve, but one I thank the universe for. With every beat of my heart." He opened the box, revealing a simple yet stunning ring, an emerald surrounded by tiny diamonds. "You've shown me what real courage looks like, what real love feels like, what it means to be a real human being, and I want to spend the rest of my life trying to be even half the person you are. So in front of everyone here, in front of the world, I ask you, Livia Villani, will you marry me?" Tears streamed freely down Livia's face. She looked at the man kneeling before her, no longer the one who had left her behind. This man carried scars, carried humility, carried love in every inch of him. "Yes," she said clearly through her tears. 1,000 times yes. The hall erupted in applause as Icarus slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood, pulling her into a kiss that was both celebration and vow. When they parted, they were both laughing and crying. "I have a surprise for you," Livia said, brushing a tear from her cheek. "Better than this moment?" "That's impossible." She smiled mischievously and waved toward the entrance. The doors opened, and a woman stepped in, pushing a double stroller. Icarus squinted, confused, until he saw who was inside. Gail and Serena. Their children, who he thought was still in Boston with the nanny, were right there, dressed like tiny royals. Gail in a tiny navy blue tux, Serena in a white lace-trimmed dress, both wide awake, curious eyes scanning the room. "You brought them," Icarus whispered, stunned. "Of course I did. This moment is about us, about our family. All of us had to be here." The nanny brought the kids closer. Gail, ever the bold one, stretched out his arms immediately. "Daddy!" Icarus swept him up, kissing the boy's chubby cheeks over and over. "My boy, you came to see Daddy." Livia lifted Serena, who was a little shyer. "Hi, sweetheart. Look how many people are here." "So many," Serena mumbled, burying her face into her mother's shoulder. There, surrounded by hundreds, under the glow of elegant chandeliers, Icarus and Livia stood with their children in their arms, and the entire world witnessed what a real family looked like. Not perfect, not unmarked, but whole, strong, unshakable. The celebration continued, but Icarus and Livia slipped away to the hospital's rooftop terrace with the kids. The New York skyline sparkled before them, millions of lights blinking. The same city that had nearly crushed them, now shining like a blessing. Gale ran from one end to the other, chasing stars. Serena, barely awake, rested against Livia's chest. "I still can't believe you brought them," Icarus said, wrapping his arm around her waist. "I had to, because when I was defending my thesis, getting all the congratulations, all I could think about was how none of it mattered without them. You, Gale, Serena, you're my greatest achievement. Everything else is just noise." He kissed the top of her head. "You know we're getting married soon, right?" "I can't wait another day to call you my wife," Livia laughed. "How about next month? Something simple. Just us, the kids, and the people who really matter." "Perfect, but I have one condition." "What is it?" "I want it to be at the Benicio Institute, in the garden, where we turned pain into beauty." "That feels like the right place." Tears shimmered in her eyes again. "It would be perfect." Gale came racing back, tugging at Icarus's pants. "Daddy, I want ice cream." "Now? It's almost 10 at night. Please." Gale flashed his best puppy eyes. Icarus looked at Livia, who grinned. "I think a special exception can be made. It is a big night after all." "Then let's go." Icarus hoisted Gale into his arms. "Let's find the best ice cream in New York at 10 o'clock at night." "Impossible," Livia teased. "Nothing's impossible for this family. We've already proved that." They found a 24 ice cream shop in Brooklyn. They sat at a plastic table on the sidewalk, Gale messily devouring a chocolate cone, Serena happily spooning strawberry, Icarus and Livia sharing a tart lemon sorbet. It was nothing like that first sidewalk where everything began, and yet it was exactly like it. Still a sidewalk, still New York, still them. "Do you regret anything?" Icarus asked suddenly. Livia paused. "I regret the pain, the hunger, the cold nights. But I don't regret the path, because the path brought me here, to you, to them, and I wouldn't trade that for anything, not even for a life without scars, especially not that. My scars remind me how strong I am, how strong we are." Icarus took her hand across the table, the engagement ring catching the glow of the street lamp. "I promise," he said solemnly, "to spend the rest of my life making you happy. Not perfectly, because perfection doesn't exist, but truly, deeply, the kind of happiness that comes from being loved exactly as you are, flaws and all. I accept that promise, and I make the same one to you." Right then, Gale sneezed, spraying chocolate everywhere. Serena burst into laughter, a bright sound echoing down the street, and Icarus and Livia broke into fits of laughter too, cleaning up the mess, living that messy, chaotic, absolutely perfect moment. 1 month later, just as promised, they got married in the garden of the Benicio Ravelli Institute. It was a soft, sunny day, with a pale blue sky dotted with white clouds. The children from the school had created all the decorations, paper flowers, colorful paintings strung from tree branches, a rainbow of imagination. Livia walked in with Gale and Serena by her sides, each holding one of her hands. She wore a simple, beautiful white dress with lace detail, her hair flowing in natural waves. There was no traditional music. Instead, the children sang a song they had written themselves, about love and new beginnings. Icarus stood under the sprawling old oak tree they'd chosen as their altar, tears falling the moment he saw her walk in. There were no formal bridesmaids or groomsmen, just Julia, the friend Livia had made during college, Dr. Matthews, and Diana Costa, who had become part of their extended family. The officiant kept things simple. The words were heartfelt, and when the time came for the vows, they both spoke from the deepest parts of their hearts. "Livia," Icarus began, holding both her hands, "you taught me that redemption is possible, but no matter how far we fall, there's always a way back, if we have the courage to walk it. You gave me the 2 greatest gifts of my life, Gail and Serena. But more than that, you gave me back myself, the man I was supposed to be, the man I become when I'm with you. I promise to love you, honor you, and choose you every single day for the rest of my life. Livia wiped away her tears before she spoke. Icarus, when I met you, you were a broken man pretending to be invincible, and I was an invisible woman pretending to be strong. Together, we shattered completely, and together, we rebuilt, for real. We're not perfect. Our story isn't a fairy tale, but it's ours. Real, true, earned through blood, sweat, and tears. And there is nothing in the world I would trade for that. I promise to love you, not despite your flaws, but with them, because they are part of the man I love. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the officiant said, smiling. The kiss that followed was long and full of fire, witnessed by 50 people who clapped, cheered, and cried. Gail and Serena wrapped themselves around their parents' legs, and someone captured a photo that would one day become iconic. The four of them, laughing, alive, together. The reception was modest, but full of joy. Home-cooked food, cheap wine, and live music played by students from the Benicio Ravelli Institute. No extravagance, no pretenses, just pure, honest love. As the sun began to set, Icarus pulled Livia into a slow dance in the middle of the garden. There was no dance floor, just grass and wildflowers, but it couldn't have been more perfect. So, Mrs. Ravelli, he whispered as they moved together, how does it feel? Strange to hear that name, she said with a soft laugh, but good, really good. She rested her head on his chest. Do you think we're going to make it forever? I don't know, he said honestly. Forever is a long time, but I know I'll fight for it every day, because you and those kids, you are my forever. No matter what comes, even when I'm old and grumpy, especially then, I'll love you even more. Livia laughed, and the sound was joy in its purest form. As they danced, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink, orange, and gold. The kids ran in circles around them. Diana chatted with Julia. Dr. Matthews debated medical theories with a few colleagues. It was chaotic. It was imperfect. It was loud and messy and utterly magical. It was life. Thank you, Livia whispered. For what? For not giving up, for fighting, for showing me that even the most broken stories can have beautiful endings. Icarus kissed her, slow and gentle. The beautiful ending is you. It's always been you. And there, beneath a sky that seemed to celebrate with them, surrounded by love, music, and new beginnings, Icarus and Livia danced, not as two people, but as one soul, beating in two bodies. The journey had been brutal, but the destination, this moment, this family, this love, made every scar worth it. When Gail and Serena came running to hug them, interrupting the dance but completing the moment, the four of them laughed together. A family, real, flawed, unbreakable. And finally, after all the pain, the heartbreak, the battles, finally, they were home. If this story moved you, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We share new stories every single day. What would you have done in the millionaire's place? Comment below and send this story to someone you care about.